guys, it's Mrs. Moylan. Today's lesson we are rounding. So when we are rounding, we have to first figure out which place value we want to round to. So in this case, we're going to round to the nearest hundreds place. So this is the hundreds place, tens place, ones place, and then the decimal point. If we are looking at the rounding to the hundreds place, we've got to look next door. If it's at the midpoint or above the midpoint, that means that the hundreds place is going to be rounded up. And since this 5 is at the midpoint, this hundreds place would round up to a 10, and everything else would become a 0. And that would be what we would round that to. So if that original number, 952, we would estimate that to be 1,000 if we are rounding to the nearest hundreds place. The next one we're going to do, we are going to round to the tenths place. Round to the tenths place. So we need to shift over and take a look at the tenths place. If this is my number, we need to look at the tenths place since that's where we're rounding to. So this would be the tenths place, and there's a 7 in the tenths place. I'm going to look next door, and I see that that is an ace, which is standing for a 1. So a 1 means that that 7 is going to stay the same. So if we're rounding to the tenths place and our number is 3 and 71 hundredths, well then our number would remain 3 and 7, but then this would become a 0. So that would be 3 and 7 tenths, or 70 hundredths. Next one we're going to do, we're going to round to the nearest dollar. Round to the nearest dollar. So that means that we want to be focusing in on the ones place if we're going to round to the nearest dollar. So if our new number becomes 4 and 51 hundredths, and we're rounding to the nearest dollar, then we have to look past the decimal point to the next place value. So this 5 is above or at the midpoint, which would bump this 4 up to a 5. So we would round the dollar to be 5, and these would become zeros. The last one we're going to do, we're going to round to the nearest cent. Round to the nearest cent. So if we're talking about cents, we're talking about the hundredths place. So if we get our number out here, and if we're talking about the cents, again, we're talking about the hundredths place. So we focus in on the hundredths place, and we've got a 7 in the hundredths place. We've got to look next door at the thousandths place. We've got a 1 in the thousandths place. So that means that our number, 3 and 771 thousandths to the nearest cent, would be $3.77, and everything beyond that would become a 0. Hope this helps with rounding.